What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. So if you saw my last video, I talked about the worst horror movies that I saw in 2023. So I decided in this video to lighten up the mood and let's talk about the best horror movies I saw this year. And there weren't that many, but the few horror movies that were good this year, I did really enjoy. So let's get to the list. Starting off the list at number 5 is going to be Evil Dead Rise. Not only is this one of my favorite horror movies of the year, this was my favorite theater experience of the year. I did not have a better time in any other movie that I saw this year in theaters than this movie right here. And that is partly due to the audience that I saw it with. People were laughing at the right time, they were screaming at the right time. It was just the right energy in the room and it felt awesome. I did not experience that with any other movie this year. The last time I had a theater experience this memorable would have to be like Spider-Man No Way Home, when everyone was just yelling out at the same time when there was Easter eggs coming up on screen. So due to that experience that I had with the audience in that theater, that definitely made it one of the best horror movies of the year. And on top of that, I'm not saying that it's one of the best story-wise, but the acting performance of Alyssa Sutherland was spectacular. I mean, literally Oscar-worthy. I'm not kidding. She was awesome in this movie. Definitely a standout performance. The makeup design on her was awesome. She looked super scary. Her lines were awesome. Like that one part when she's like, "Mommy's with the maggots now." Ooh, super creepy. And there's one or two scenes in this movie, especially like the peephole scene where you can see like stuff happening outside. It's just really well edited. It's very fun. Maybe not the best story-wise, like I said, but just for some good old fun, this movie provides that. Next on the list is going to be Saw X. I cannot believe that I'm putting a 10th installment in a franchise in my best horror movies of the year. I never thought this day would come. But man, Saw X proves me wrong because I absolutely love this movie. And I'm not a huge Saw fan. I do like the first movie. I like the twist at the end. It definitely caught me by surprise the first time I watched it. So I do like the first one for what it did for the horror genre. But then after that, I never really watched any of the other Saw movies because I wasn't really interested in it. But when I heard that this movie was coming out, I decided to watch a couple more Saw movies to get more invested in the lore. So I watched Saw 2 and 3, and let me tell you what, Saw 2, very fun. I actually think it's even better than the first one, not in terms of the twist at the end, but in terms of it was a little bit more fun than the first one. But then by the third one, I was already starting to lose interest, so I didn't have high hopes on this one. But when I saw the movie, man, I was pleasantly surprised. I loved the movie, and that's mostly because we get to dive into John Kramer's story, which is something I was very interested in. And Tobin Bell was awesome in this movie. I mean, God bless him. I don't know how old he is. He's probably in his 80s, but man, he killed it as Jigsaw in this movie. I love seeing people that are that old and still like the protagonist of a big movie coming out in theaters. And man, I loved it. I think the plot is also really good and intriguing, much better than some of the other plots in the Saw movies, which are not really that good. Surprisingly, this one's really good. And just a cherry on the sundae, I love the ending with the kid at the end. I'm not gonna spoil it. Well, let me spoil it. It's been out for a while. But at the end, we get to see Tobin Bell in one of his own traps, which we've never really seen that scenario play out in the Saw franchise. And on top of that, there's the kid earlier in the movie that he talked to when he fixed his bike and he was telling him no hala, and then he saved the kid's life by like with the pulley thing at the end. Man, it just makes him like the anti-hero, and I was just like, I can't believe what's going on right now. I actually like John Kramer, the sick psychopath. I'm on his side. So yeah, because this movie surprised me so much and because it's the 10th installment in a franchise, I can't believe it's this good. It earns a spot at the number 4 spot on this list, Saw X. Let's get it. Coming in at number 3 is going to be VHS 85. Now, I actually have a review on this movie on my channel. I'll link it in the description below if you haven't seen it. But if you have seen that review, I wasn't too thrilled about this movie, and that's because I am comparing it to the other VHS movies, which is my favorite found footage franchise out there. So when I'm comparing it to the other ones, it's not as good. But when I'm comparing this movie to the other horror movies of 2023, oh yeah, it stands out because 2023 just has so many horror movies that it's not that hard to stand out. I mean, if you haven't seen my video of the worst horror movies, check that one out. But yeah, VHS 85 is a found footage horror movie that's in an anthology style where there's like multiple stories interwoven into this movie, and it is the 5th installment in the franchise, so it's not the best one, but it is very good. I did enjoy it. It is streaming on Shudder, and I would definitely recommend it if you just want to have a fun time. You want to see multiple horror stories interwoven into one movie. You get a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of fantasy, a little bit bit of ancient gods coming back to life. It is a throwback to the 80s decade, so if you like that, it'll feel even more nostalgic. So I would definitely recommend this movie, especially if you're a VHS fan. You gotta watch this movie. But even if you're not a VHS fan and you're just looking for something to watch on a rainy day that's not gonna disappoint you, I think this is a good pick. And out of the movies in 2023, I think this is one of the more enjoyable horror films. But before I move on to the top 2 movies, I do want to mention that these past 3 that I was talking about, I do have individual videos on: The Evil Dead Rise, Saw X, and VHS 85. So if you are curious or you want my more in-depth analysis and thoughts on those movies, I'll link those videos in the description. Check those out. But these other 2 movies I have not done a single video on yet, so just wanted to throw that out there. All right, coming in at number 2 is gonna be When Evil Lurks. This is an Argentinian film, and I actually didn't even want to watch this movie when it came out. It was in theaters, but when I was like, oh, didn't really catch my attention, and it was in Spanish, so I was like, not interested. But everybody online was talking about it. Everybody was raving about it, so I was like, you know what? I gotta give it a shot because I haven't seen that many good horror movies, and everyone's talking about this one. So you know what? Let's do it. Watch this movie. They were totally right. This is hands down one of the best horror movies of the year, and it would be number 1 if it wasn't for my number 1, which we'll get to, but this is fantastic nonetheless. Be a man, grow up, and let's read the subtitles, okay? Because I speak Spanish, but let me tell you what, Argentinian Spanish, man, that's tough to understand. The number 1 thing I like about this movie is the pacing. Right off the bat, we get going. I mean, as soon as the movie starts, you're in the plot. There's no setup, there's no build-up, there's no exposition. We get going, and it's just hectic from start to finish, and I love it. I love that. Sometimes I don't want more exposition, I don't want build-up. Sometimes a slow burn is nice now and then, but sometimes I just want a roller coaster to just go. You know, there's the roller coasters that you go slowly, like here's the build-up, here's the setup, here's the exposition, and then you go. But then if you go to Six Flags, there's that one roller coaster, I forget what is it Superman? But it just goes right off the bat. You're just there and it's like, that's this movie. And I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but the acting in this movie is great. The scary scenes in this movie are super gruesome. I mean, there's a scene in this movie where like this woman is possessed and she's just pulling out the brains of this guy's daughter and just eating it, and you're just like, even the guy in the movie's like driving the car away, just like, yeah, that just happened. That's how intense this movie is. And on top of all of that, I think it gives a very unique spin on the possession genre that we haven't really seen before, and they do it very well. They execute it perfectly. This movie is one of the best horror movies I've seen this year, and period. Shout out to Argentina. I mean, they're killing it, man. They're world champs from the World Cup with Messi, and then now they're killing it in the horror genre. Shout out Argentina. But finally, coming in at number 1 is going to be Skinamarink. Oh yeah, baby. This is by far my favorite horror movie that I saw this year, and it's mainly due to the reason that it's the first of a kind. I've never seen a movie like this. I know I say a lot of times like, oh, this movie's unique, this movie is unique. This movie's unique as You have definitely not seen a movie like this. If anything, you've seen maybe some YouTube analog horror that's similar to this, but that's what I love about this movie. It's like kind of sprouting a new genre in horror, which kind of sprouted in the internet. If you don't know much about analog horror, I would suggest you watch stuff like the Mandela Catalog or the Back Rooms. Those are going to give you a good feel of what analog horror is, and it really sprouted in the internet. I'm going to say that a lot, goddammit. But now that we have this is officially a movie that's kind of like that, man, it was a terrifying experience. Now, I can understand if some of you guys have seen it, that you hate this movie, you think it's boring, nothing happens, you're just like, Enzo, this one, what are you talking about? Just hear me out. I can totally understand if that's the way you feel, but for me, this is how I would recommend it to someone. One, I'm a pothead, if you didn't know, guilty as charged. But if you do enjoy marijuana, hear out my suggestion. I would say don't watch this movie with a friend. This is not something you're gonna watch, have fun, talk about afterwards. It's not that type of movie. If you're alone one night and you wanna get scared, take a nice little edible, wait 30 to 40 minutes while it kicks in. Once it starts kicking in, everything's a little bit fuzzy. Then turn off the lights in your room, make sure it's nighttime, and watch Skinamarink. Zone the f*** out, dazed as f***, stoned as hell, and you are going to get terrified. That's how I watch this movie. I think this is the perfect movie to get stoned to because it is very long, very boring, like I said. But if you're in the right headspace, it could just be like a trance. It's an experience. You're just in this dreamlike state, experiencing this void of scariness. You really have to immerse yourself. If you don't immerse yourself, you're not going to appreciate this movie. And I understand if you don't, but I am pleading you, if you're a true fan of horror, I'm telling you, it could be one of the most horrific experiences you've had, because it's just like, my favorite comedian, Chris D'Elia, explained it perfectly. He's like, imagine when you grow up, you're scared of monsters and ghosts and stuff like that, but when you're older, you're not really scared of stuff like that anymore because you're part of the real world. But when you're an adult, what is the that scares you? The that scares you is being in a dream and you're not knowing it's a dream, and then like you're going, like if you're going about your day, and then all of a sudden the door's not there, or all of a sudden you're not in the house, or it's like the house is bigger and like the stairs are infinite and you're just like, what the is going on? That's how this movie feels. It's so weird, it's bizarre, I've never seen it before. And you know what's so amazing about movies like this, dude? This was made on a budget of $15,000. It made over $2 million. I mean, we talk about the Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity. These movies, for some reason, man, they can be done on such a low budget and get such a massive return on investment. It's bonkers. It's bonkers. Shout out to the director who did this, because one, he made a profit, but two, he did something that stood out in this genre, which is very hard to do. It definitely earns the #1 spot on the best horror movie of 2023. Prove me wrong. Comment below a scarier movie than this one. I truly believe this was my favorite horror film of the year. But that is my list for 2023's best horror movies. Let me know in the comments below if I missed any movies, but before you do that, make sure you watch my other video where I talk about the worst horror movies of the year, because I don't want you commenting something that I already talked about in that video. But if you have, let me know some of the movies that I missed, because I definitely love this genre and I would love to see movies like, for example, Malum I want to watch. But those are the movies that I thought were the best horror movies of the year. And as always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Hit that like button, and I'll catch you on the next one.